Hey everyone, welcome to the Renewed Mind, the podcast where we talk about healing, faith, and mental wellness for everyone who's ready to grow, glow, and rest in God's peace. We are Barbara
and Rochelle. We created this space because we know what it feels like to carry so much, to show up strong for everyone else while quietly struggling inside. We've learned that healing is not weakness, it's actually a holy work.
So here we'll have real conversations about renewing your mind, breaking free from burnout, and walking boldly on purpose, all while staying grounded in faith. You'll hear encouragement, honest stories, and practical tools to help you care for your mind, body, and spirit.
So whether you're driving to work, winding down from a long day, or just need a reminder that you're not alone, this is your moment to pause, breathe, and be poured into. So grab your
journal, grab your tea, and let's get started on this journey to becoming renewed in your mind.
So this morning, we decided to interview Barbara's sister, Yvette. And so welcome, Barbara, to the podcast. Welcome, Yvette, to the podcast. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you advocate for mental health?
Yeah, so as they said, my name is Yvette Moye, and I am Barbara's sister. And advocating for mental health is something that I think kind of comes natural to me. I'm an educator, and so I do a lot of SEL work, social emotional learning for students. In addition to that, I've had several family members that have struggled with mental health, and I have also had a battle or challenges with mental health as well. And so it just comes natural for me.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about the struggles that you've had and that your family's had? And have you seen any similarities or patterns?
Yeah. So early on in my life, I did battle with mental health, just depression, just suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideations. It's something that I've wrestled with early in my life. And from there, it was just a journey where I had to embrace the healing of God. And then not only that, but in that process of embracing God's healing for my life, I had to learn to accept who I am and not get caught into the comparison trap, because I think that's where a lot of us get caught up in. Is a comparison trap, at least from what I've experienced, what I've observed, as well as working with young people. It's a lot of comparison. It's a lot of, self-worth. It's a lot of just being, feeling that you're not accepted or you're not embraced. And so a lot of rejection. And so I had to learn that, number one, that I'm God's beloved. And then number two, I had to get on the journey of learning how to love myself as well in the way that God sees me.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So can you share a story about a time when you felt your advocacy made a real tangible difference in someone's life or for a community?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of challenging to narrow it down to one. But like I said, I deal with a lot of young people. So I constantly have young people in my office, talking to me. I think that if I had to consider one, there was a student that came to the building at the time that I was working at, and really struggled with mental health. She had a lot of diagnosis as a young person, a lot of anger issues. And I think at the time, if I'm not mistaken, she was diagnosed with schizophrenia at a very young age. And she had gotten into a physical altercation with another student. Well, it turned out really bad to where the other student suffered from a lot of injuries as a result of the other student. And so it weighed really heavy on my heart. And I just began to ask God, how might I be an instrument or a vessel to encourage this young woman, or just to be a thought, just to be a listening ear, or try to build some type of relationship, because we know that, the data shows and evidence shows that when students are connected or feel like they have at least one safe person in a building, that they can begin to thrive. And so I wanted to be instrumental in building a relationship with her. And so, opportunities would come up, present themselves, and I would just talk to her, and we grew very fond of one another and built a very deep relationship, to where she felt safe in sharing things with me, and God gave me opportunities to even pray with her and encourage her through the word. And since then, she's gone and grown and graduated, and I believe she has children of her own now. And so that was, if I had to think of one story, it would be that student. She came into our building as a freshman. She was able to graduate and begin a career in another state. So very proud of just the drop in the bucket of an influence that I was able to have on her.
That's incredible. So what do you do for, when you say you have students, can you tell us more about your job?
So right now I'm an administrator at a middle school. But before then, I spent the majority of my career in high school, which is my passion. Is what I love: young people and their families. I love being able to be used as an instrument in families, and just helping families navigate through challenging times. I'm very passionate about my own family and love my own family, and believe in the family unit. I believe in the family unit. And I know right now it's difficult and challenging for parents, especially with students that may be struggling with mental health issues. And so it's like, they feel overwhelmed. They feel like, what did they do wrong? They have all these questions in the back of their mind. And so I just love being a listening ear, and then also offering any type of resources and or support that I can for these families. I've never seen so many students, young people, diagnosed with different mental illnesses. And so parents come in feeling hopeless. They come in feeling overwhelmed. They come in asking educators, like, what am I supposed to do? Well, how do I deal with this? How can you help me? And so I appreciate God giving me the opportunity just to be able to sit down and have just some really honest, frank conversations based off experience, based off education, based off of personal life, and hopefully that helps somebody in their walk.
That's incredible. So would you say that your early experience, when you were experiencing those suicidal thoughts, and then on top of that, having your personal revelation of how God loves you, that it kind of ignites this passion that you kind of see yourself in some of your students?
Yeah, I would say that being able to relate. And then, as I mentioned, I have a close family members that have also battled to overcome mental health challenges. And so I think the two of those combined, yes, gives me a heart and a passion for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is good. So in your opinion, what is the most urgent issue facing mental health today, and how can we collectively address it?
The most urgent issue. That's a tough question. What is the most urgent issue? I'd say education.
Okay.
Say education about mental health, and just heightening a sense of awareness. I think that throughout life, everybody experiences some form of mental health challenge or issue throughout their life, whether it's, feeling anxiety, because I think we there's these big words, right? For some people, when they get a mental health diagnosis, there are these big words, when you break those big words down, a lot of them just mean an unsettling in your spirit. You're feeling uncomfortable about something, or you're rejected, or you have fear about something, or you're feeling oppressed and or depressed. And so I think that if we were able to educate and heighten the sense of awareness about mental health, I think that we would be on a better path to support our loved ones, ourselves, and then those that God brings across our lives.
That's really good.
So education, education, education.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Because I know for myself, when my loved ones had really intense mental health experiences, it was the education that kind of brought light. And even just knowing what we are dealing with is kind of like half the battle. And it
Yeah.
just brought understanding and like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then being educated on how you can help them, that sometimes the normal way of doing things is quote unquote normal is not always, or what you're inclined to do is not always the right way. And you kind of have to pause. And if you just get educated on how to empathize or how to have that conversation and let them lead kind of thing, your coaching, it makes a world of difference.
Yeah, I think it's also, a couple of things come to mind. It's a trust issue as well as, like I love how you said, we need to heighten that sense of awareness. I think that when I was, experiencing with family members mental health challenges, it was frightening. It was frightening because, growing up, the majority of us had an uncle or auntie that sat in a corner and rocked back and forth and, something like that. And your parents, or you had other family members just be like, leave them alone, or, whatever. Or you had a family member that would be, very, very boisterous about things or very opinionated about things, and then would take that to the extreme. And as a child, you're sitting back and you're watching and you're like, oh my God, what's wrong? And then a sense of fear even develops in your heart because you're like, what's wrong with that person? You know what I mean? So I think at a very young age, we develop a fear or an uncomfortableness about these diagnoses that people have. And so it's kind of like, oh, stay away from them. And then I think also the church has done a disservice as well about mental health. And the way that they see or the way that it has been communicated about mental health. And so it took me on a long journey, spending time with God and studying the word and studying other books that I've read, and really being able to understand and heighten my awareness about what is happening with the person that may be having a mental health challenge. Because like I said, throughout life, everybody experiences some form of mental health, whether it's anxiety about a situation or it is depression and or oppression. And I love that you put normal in air quotes, because I think and I don't know how deep this conversation is supposed to go, but I just think that, when a very, very close loved one of mine was going through a mental health challenge, I, at that point, learned that what is normal, who gets to decide what normal is? You know what I mean? Who gets to say, other than outside of the word of God, who gets to define that? And I think we let society define what normal is. And so that is a word that I really try not to use in my conversations. And it's not a word that I use in my vocabulary. I learned that when I had, like I said, a very close loved one that was going through a mental health challenge, that I don't get to decide what normal is, and who does? Who gets to say what normal looks like? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I'm learning that normal is really what's the word? It's really perspective, or it's really a matter of, because my normal is different than Susie's normal, and her normal is different than Willie's normal. And so and then you got three different normals, and so you really have to learn with mental health to enter into that person's normal. And what's normal for them is probably okay, even though it's not, like, I wouldn't do it that way, but they're not hurting themselves, they're not hurting others.
Yeah.
It's kind of, and you learn how to build trust even in that way.
Yeah. And I think too, comparing, because we have children and you have other, people, families that you may look at, and you compare your family with, and that relationship, and all that. Again, as I started out saying, the comparison trap, it is bigger and broader than I think we recognize or realize that we're doing on a day-to-day basis, because what my kid might be doing is totally different than what someone else's kid is doing. And am I saying that's normal? I think we look at society, and what society is saying is based off the majority, basically, is what there's based
Mhm.
off the majority of people. This is what we categorize as normal. But oftentimes we're not in the majority in several ways. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
I just
And it's
think getting
okay.
comfortable with that and accepting that it that in itself can be life changing, because I'll add to this really quickly, because while
Mhm.
you are watching, or not watching, but while you're walking along with a loved one that is going through a mental health challenge, you yourself can
Mhm.
then be going through a mental health challenge, because as you're walking through this with a loved one, you're
Yeah.
then having to grieve. You're going through the grief process of what you once knew or what you once thought was normal. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? And so that is gone. That person is gone now, right? And now
Yeah.
you have to get to know another person. And so
Mhm.
you're grieving, you're trying to grapple with, you're trying to understand what's happening, you're trying to understand where you fit in, you're trying to understand what I should say, what I shouldn't say, if this is okay, if that's not okay. It's all these balancing acts that you have to do. And then at
Yeah.
some point in time, that begins to weigh on your mental health as well. And so if you don't have a good grounding, a good foundation, and an understanding of the nuances of mental health and what that can bring, you can find yourself kind of grappling
Mm.
with your own mental health.
Yeah.
Mhm.
For
That's
sure.
good.
Yeah. For sure.
So, what are some of the biggest misconceptions about mental health that you frequently encounter, and how do you work to debunk them?
Yeah.
Mm.
I think I'll use, like I said, in education.
Mhm.
There is, we can just use something as simple as, the way students learn. Everybody learns differently, and there's the majority of people that learn a certain way. And then there's, other people where in education, they have an individualized education plan or an IEP, because they may not learn like the majority. And so I think, the biggest thing, I know I keep saying it, but I would just have to go back to just really understanding and embracing and accepting who your child is, or who the student is, the way that they show up. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that I have to agree with, right? It
Right.
doesn't mean necessarily I have to agree with what's happening or what they're experiencing or anything like that. But it means I accept you the way that you are. You don't have to
Mhm.
fix yourself up. You don't have to change yourself. You don't have to do any of these things to be embraced or accepted. So I accept you the way that you are. And then my job also in accepting you the way that you are is creating wraparound services to support you the way that you are.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, and so I think that's one way of debunking to me is
Mhm.
just finding creative ways outside of what's considered normal, outside of
Mhm.
society, and figuring out, how do I embrace this person? How do I support this person? How do I ensure that this person has access to,
Yeah.
thinking about students, grade level access to content, so
Mhm.
that they don't fall further behind. So I just think it's about embracing and accepting people the way they are.
So, that being said, about your students, if parents are concerned about their child and not really for sure what to be looking for,
Mhm.
what are some of the behaviors that you notice that they would need help?
Yeah, I think, let's see, I would say, um, a lot of times, and it's more often than not, it's kiddos that look like us that are
Mhm.
found in these categories, right? And so I think when you see a child um, that struggles to engage in the work, or that struggles to engage or being attentive, there's something very low level things that you can notice about your student, or
Mhm.
or, liking things a certain way all the time. Certain things have to be this way all the time. That's another, or, not being able to adhere to or listen to or rationalize with authority. That's another thing that would be a sign. You know what I mean? Being very argumentative or can't accept no for an answer, so those are some of the things that, kind of look at and they're like, oh, okay, this child needs some additional support, right? And so just helping parents, because the truth of the matter is parents don't know. A lot of times they don't know. And so they're looking for educators to help them with that process and being able to identify and pointing them in the right direction of how they might get support, as well as how might their student get support. When noticing the red flags, it's not the right word, noticing behaviors that might require additional support for that student, then calling the parent in, having that conversation with the parent, and then giving them those resources that they need to get those wraparound services outside of the school. So we can do so much in the school, but the parents have to initiate the process most often. And so they need to go take their child to the doctor so the doctor can do a checkup on them and see if they recognize anything like ADHD or defiance disorder, things like that, and so helping them, pointing them in the right direction. I will have to say more often than not, than I've experienced in my career, is that parents are afraid of that. They are afraid because then it says, oh, what does that say about my kiddo? What does that say about me as a parent? And so it's also during that conversation, helping parents understand this is okay. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing that you did. There's nothing wrong with your child. They just need some additional support. And it's really important that we get that as early as possible, because we all know what that could look like as students get older and become adults, and then what they can lead to.
Yeah. I'm thinking of a friend. I know that you're in Denver, Colorado, and we're in Kansas City, Missouri. And here I have a friend, her son is having a really hard time. She's realizing that he needs more help, but the school it's become overwhelming for the school to where he doesn't even go to school anymore because they just can't handle him. And so how do you guys in Colorado, how do you handle families that it's overwhelming for both the family and for the school? Is there something that you guys have set up for situations like that?
Yeah, so I always tell people that kids don't miss school for no reason. If a student is being absent repeatedly, they are habitually truant. It's a reason, because kids just don't miss school. So there's a reason, whether it is something going on with the family that is preventing the student to come to school, whether it's the student is struggling themselves about coming to school, fear, bullying, feel like they can't learn, whatever it may be, or, the family is displaced and they have to move around, whatever the reason is, kids just don't miss school. So it is the responsibility of the school to be reaching out to that family and finding out what's going on. So what is the school's attendance policy? Is where I would start, because that's where we find out a lot of things about kiddos. If the attendance policy is lacking, or it doesn't have the proper policies and procedures in place to support kids, then they fall through the cracks. Because like this student that you're just describing, his absences would be a red flag for me. I'd be like, where is Johnny? Why isn't Johnny at school? Why has Johnny missed 5 days of school or 3 days? So the policy should be at 3 days. When it's consecutive absences, 3 days, then I'm reaching out to the family. I'm calling, I'm trying to see if I haven't heard from them, then we're reaching out to them. And then if I don't hear something from them, then it's like we need to get up and go and conduct a home visit. And a lot of times that's where it begins to fall through the cracks, right? Because staffing is an issue. Safety can be an issue depending on, where people are, that type of thing, demographics, that type of thing. And so I always say attendance is kind of like the first red flag to try to reach out to families and support them. This student sounds like that he's not coming to school because either he doesn't feel supported by the teachers, or the teachers don't know how to support him, or he maybe has a diagnosis that hasn't been identified yet. So there could be a lot of reasons, right, as to
Yeah.
why. And I don't know the situation, and so I don't want to
Yeah.
misspeak or judge those educators and what they're doing, because it's quite the process. But to me, just firsthand hearing what you just shared, I would be
Yeah.
reaching out to the family to find out where the kid is.
Okay. And so you guys have people on your staff that do that.
Yeah,
That
yeah. We have an attendance team that that is their job. Your job is to track the data of attendance, absences, and look at the data and see every day who's not here, who's been missing for 3 days. So not only do we have an attendance team, but the first step is the teacher in the classroom, because the teacher in the classroom knows Johnny more than my attendance team would know Johnny. And so the teacher in the classroom should be like, Johnny's been gone for 3 days. There's nothing telling me that he's out sick or he's on vacation with his family. So that tells me, I should reach out. So I should reach out to the family. And then as the teacher, I should notify the attendance team or the MTSS team to say, hey, Johnny's been missing or Yvette's been missing for 3 consecutive days. Have you guys heard anything from them? It's not like them. Should we do a home visit? Start having those type of conversations, right? Digging deeper into the student's profile to understand the story behind the student ID number, because there's a story, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to start digging to find out what that story is.
What that story is. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. So next question. How do you maintain your own mental well-being while continually engaging with challenging topics in your advocacy work?
Yeah, that is a challenge. Honestly, at this stage in my life, that is a challenge right now. I am, going through, I don't know, perimenopausal or menopausal or all the things. And so it is a challenge, but I think one thing that's helpful for me, I always know when I am not where I need to be spiritually based off how I'm feeling, right?
Okay.
And so if I am experiencing high levels of anxiety, or if I'm experiencing, low levels of oppression or depression about something, that tells me I need to reconnect. I need to make sure that I'm in alignment with the Father, because something's off here. Because there is, how do I want to say this? For me, I know that when I am really where I'm supposed to be spiritually, when these feelings might arise, it's not that the feelings don't arise, but the feelings might arise, but it's how I respond to them, right? And so I can tell when I'm off, right? Or I'm not where I need to be in a spiritual place based off the way I respond. So not saying that because I'm in a good spiritual place that I won't experience, anxiety tries to approach up, or I feel, oppressed or depressed about a situation. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying when those feelings arise, it's how do I respond to them, which is an indicator of where I am spiritually, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that helps you get through other people's.
Yeah. So that helps me, that, right. That tells me that, okay, that you're not, you need to get back grounded, or you're not in a good mental space. And so you need to get back into the presence of God more or longer, or dig deeper, or whatever that may look like, that I can be that support. Because if I'm not in a good place, then I'm unable to be supportive of others. And so, it's what the airline tells us: put your mask on first before you help somebody else, right? And so I got to make sure my mask is on before I try to go and help somebody else.
Yeah.
That's really good.
So if there was someone who was wanting to begin to be a mental health advocate, what is one piece of advice that you would give to them?
Check your mental health first. Make sure you're in a good place, because what you don't want is to project whatever you're going through onto other people. And that happens a lot, right? And so, that makes it so much worse. And that could just be something very, very simple. I'll share just something very simple, low-hanging fruit, in my opinion. is that, one of my kiddos at the time was wanting to do something. And I was like, oh, originally when they told me about it, I was like, oh, you shouldn't do that.
Mhm.
I knew somebody that told me blah, 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 blah about this situation. And, you should be careful or reconsider that. And I don't think that's a good idea. And as I'm talking, the Holy
Yeah.
Spirit checks me.
Mm.
Says, don't project your fears
Yeah.
onto your child, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's why I say check your mental health and be mindful of what you're saying and speaking first. And then I would say just sometimes it's just simple as being a listening ear for
Yeah.
somebody, and not saying that you need to have all the answers, because you're not going to
Hmm.
have all the answers, accepting that first and foremost, that I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
Check your mental health, and then just be prepared, say, what, I don't, be an open and honest and transparent about it. I don't have all the answers. Here's some resources that I've found. How might I support you? So asking questions more so than giving information. So
Mhm.
asking questions to seek for clarity, like, what does that feel like? Or what, when you hear that, or when someone says that, what does that make you feel like? How are you feeling today? Where are you sitting at today on a scale of 1 to 5? But that type of thing. And just
Hmm.
really listening more so than you are trying to provide advice to them. Because I've learned that that is really not as what is needed at the time.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Hmm.
most often
Okay.
it's more of,
Yeah.
most often it's more of just being heard. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And questions invite them to tell their story more. Yeah.
Yeah, to tell their story more. And do not, because I think a lot of times, or often when we come from a place of taking advice, it could be perceived from the person as
Mhm.
judgmental. You're being judgmental and you're not hearing them. And so I think, yeah, and then just being mindful of being dismissive, oh, you'll get over it, oh, that's just a stage you're going through, or oh, that's
Mhm.
just, so you find yourself being dismissive, and that can also make the situation worse. So saying that, Rochelle and Barbara, makes me think about, it is, it can be weighty. That's how I'll say that. It can be weighty,
Yeah.
especially if you have a close loved one that you're walking through this process with. And again, that's why you have to make sure you're in a good place and you're connected to the Father in a way that you feel good mentally, so that you're able to have that level of grace. And God will give you that grace. God will give you the grace that you need to walk through it.
Yeah.
I just think that you have to be really connected to the Father to be able to get the direction that you need on how to be supportive.
Yeah.
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 Amen.
And
So
so,
is there
Bart,
anything? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I know that you've shared some of your story. I just don't know how in depth that you have gone
Yeah.
into that. So I'm, being very cautious and careful about
Mm.
my wording.
Yeah. Yeah. That's okay. I appreciate that. Okay. So is there anything else you would like to share that we haven't covered, or any final thoughts you'd like to leave with our audience?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, as I was walking alongside, well,
Mhm.
in my mind, as I was walking alongside Barbara in her journey, I think
Yeah.
the biggest takeaway for me
Mhm.
was understanding um, the process of grief. I don't
Yeah.
think that family members really know and understand what they've signed up for. Uh,
Mhm.
I shouldn't say signed up for, but just as being a part of a family unit, what
Mhm.
that could look like for you. And for
Yeah.
every person in the family unit, the role could be different. It could look very, very different. And so
Mhm.
I think just being able to let go of what you want, let go of what you once thought something was, or the relationship was, or the situation was, being able to let go of that and allow God to redefine it for you.
Yeah.
and not get caught up into, well, when we was kids, this is how it was, or you didn't used to be like that, or you used to didn't say that, or you used to, all the used tos, you know what I'm saying? And so just really allow the ministry of the Holy Spirit to redefine what that relationship needs to be and look like. And then accepting that and accepting it.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. Yes. So thank you again for your valuable insights and sharing your experience with us. And thank you for being a mental health advocate.
Thank you guys for having me.